My grandfather got diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer. That was really devastating. It was just horrible. I thought my world was going to end. But my brother went to this daycare across the street. It was a convent. And so the nuns there had a sister who was going through a clinical trial that was meant for stage 4 lung cancer patients. My grandfather got into it. It saved his life. So I hope to be in a place where I can do that for others.
Welcome to the Game-Changing Women of Healthcare, a podcast featuring exceptional women making an impact in healthcare today. We celebrate our guests' accomplishments, setbacks, and the lessons they've learned throughout their careers. We dig into the many healthcare issues we face today and how these innovative leaders are working to solve them. I'm Meg Escobosa. Join me in conversation with some of the many brilliant, courageous women on the front lines of the future of health. Welcome back to the Game-Changing Women of Healthcare. I'm your host, Meg Escobosa. Today on the show, we have Miruna Sasu, President and CEO of COTA, a company providing proprietary technology, advanced analytics, and expertise to organize complex data, including real-world data, to provide a comprehensive picture of cancer that can be used to advance care and research. Hello, Miruna. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Meg. Thanks so much. It's great to be here.
We're thrilled. We have come across this notion of real-world data a bunch over the last few years, and I've thought what we could do first is just establishing what it is, and then let's get into what COTA does. Real-world data are the data relating to patient health status or the delivery of care. It can come from the electronic health record, claims and billing activities, product and disease registries, patient-generated data, including home use devices, and data gathered from other sources that can form health status. Would you agree with that definition, or what else might you add to this, or how might you reframe how we think about real-world data from COTA's perspective?
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with all of those categorizations. I would say each of them has different use cases, so you can do different things with the different portions that you just mentioned. COTA specifically works on electronic medical records, which is a set of use cases that are rather deep. So you can think about electronic medical records being able to be used for things like patient journey activity, research work, discovery of medicines, as well as developing medicines. Like, for example, putting, instead of a control arm in an oncology trial, doing a control arm in a data set. Mm-hmm. You can actually do that with electronic medical records, whereas with the others, it's a little bit more tough to do. Those categories are perfect, and I'm really excited to be talking about all of them.
Terrific. Well, tell us, who is COTA? What are you guys doing, and who are your clients?
Sure. COTA is a real-world data company in oncology. We specialize particularly in oncology. And what we do is we take electronic medical records from academic centers, from community centers, and we make sense of them. And what that really means is we take that information and we put it in data sets that are structured and organized in such a way that people can actually analyze them at scale in a population level. So we have data sets in different diseases in oncology because, as you know, oncology isn't just one disease. It's categorized by hematologic disease versus solid tumors. And then within each of those different categories, there are organ systems. And so each one of those diseases is a subset of disease. And so you have to be very, very careful on how you take the data sets and work with them because those patients are very different from each other. So COTA actually has data sets that pertains to each individual disease type. So what we do is we go into the electronic medical record, we take this data, we put it in a data set, we structure all of the data points, we go into the doctor's note, which is very, very difficult to do, and pick up data like, for example, what stage of disease is it? We take that, we structure it, and then once you have that beautiful data set together, we license it out to, for example, pharma companies, biotech companies, and we also provide it back to healthcare providers so that they can do research in it, so they can take all of these patient-level information and perform analysis on top of it to know things like, how did this type of person do in a particular category of treatment? Or did it work to expose this patient to chemotherapy and then to something else like immunotherapy? Did it extend their life? Did it not? What happened? What types of adverse events did they have and why? This is the type of information that we have in our data sets that we can analyze. So we provide the data and we also do the analysis.
I'm curious, why cancer? Why did you focus, and what's the unique benefit of real-world data in cancer care? Because I know an individual's treatment path is so important. Where do you start? Do you start with radiology or radiation? Do you start with surgery? Do you start with chemo? And that all has very big impacts on their outcomes. Can you share why cancer?
Absolutely. So COTA was founded by oncologists, and this is the area they knew best. But in addition to that, part of the reason is because oncology is serious. It's a very, very serious set of diseases that used to be terminal. Now I think I would say that we have enough therapeutic options to hopefully not make it so. But depending on staging of disease, it was a very serious diagnosis. And so because of that, COTA focused on trying to cure cancer through data.
Wow. So you've got provider clients, you've got pharma companies and payers that you work with. For the drug makers, how do they use real-world data and how does it affect the drug development process?
Sure. So I actually happen to have a really good standpoint on this because I was a drug developer prior to coming to COTA.
Yeah.
And I've worked with most companies, especially in the oncology space, most companies that still exist in this space, including COTA, to make real-world data a reality for drug development. So there are three areas that I would say are really impacted by real-world data in drug development. The first is discovery, so discovering new molecules or looking at molecules and how they should work in a set of patients. The second is development of clinical trials, and the third is post-marketing and commercialization of a drug. Historically, real-world data, as you mentioned, has been claims and billing information. That information has been used for a very, very long time in commercialization and post-marketing. But real-world data like electronic medical records have not been because it's very difficult to curate that data. Claims, you get the claims and you don't have to do anything to them. Electronic medical records, you really have to go in and make sure that all of the elements are in there. You pull out what's important from doctor's notes, which are paragraphs and sometimes thousands of pages of paragraphs for a patient's history. So you take all of that information, and with the three different parts that I just mentioned, what you can do in discovery is actually test different molecules on a set of patients that are in a database.
Wow.
That's number one. Then in the development space, you can have what's called external control arms. And that means that you don't have to put a patient on a control arm. Who wants to be on a control arm? Right? No, nobody. You want to be treated with the exploratory medicine. And so what we can do now is utilize electronic medical records and patients who have been through the therapy that you are trying to put on that control arm and test that against the treatment. So that way you can push more patients into the treatment arm to see if, they would benefit from that treatment. And then in post-marketing commercialization, you can get rid of some studies by doing them through a data set. You don't have to actually go out and enroll these patients and make them come to the site because you can follow them in electronic medical records. You can just look and do research in those records that those people are going in for treatment anyway.
Yeah.
So you can actually look at that instead of making them do all of this other stuff for an actual study.
One thing that you just immediately prompted for me is up till now, electronic medical record data has been really difficult to curate. And what do you think has made it possible to access that data? I know that structured and unstructured data is a challenge, and the unstructured is those those doctor's notes that you referenced. Are there technologies that you guys have taken advantage of that allow you to do that? And are there other technologies that you wish you had that would help you to achieve more?
Yes. So first and foremost, the type of data that is in electronic medical records has to be curated at this moment with a variety of different methodologies. First methodology is you put it through a technical work stream. So technology actually goes in and picks up all of the structured data. In the unstructured fields, a human has to touch that data. Because even if a machine goes in and decides, okay, this is the stage of disease that this doctor put in here, you don't actually know for sure until a human person goes in and says, yeah, okay, that doctor did say that it was this stage of disease in this medical record. Mm-hmm. Because a machine will pick up funky things like the doctor's note could say, not stage 4.
Right.
And if the machine picks up stage 4, then it's actually the opposite.
Yeah, right.
So the technology can do a lot, but there's a point where it stops and someone has to apply logic to it because we don't have a brain in terms of the technology. So we say artificial intelligence a lot. I would say it's artificial toddlerhood because and it's nobody's fault, right? Yeah. We've advanced it so much, but there's a lot that it can't do because it can't apply logic. Mm-hmm. So if I were to say what do I want, I want Jarvis from Iron Man. That's what I want.
and
that's what we all could benefit from.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. And so, there's still a huge human component of the work that you all are doing to harvest the insights and data from the electronic medical record.
Absolutely. And I think there will be for a while.
So human researchers and analysts out there, fear not.
Fear not. Fear not. This is going to be a needed component for a very, very long time.
Another thing that I have learned or believe is true is the idea that using real-world data helps drug makers reduce the time to development and potentially reduce costs associated with developing drugs. Is that true? Is that just a myth? What are some of those payoffs that you get or the drug makers get from using this kind of data?
Yeah, it is true. There is a lot of efficiency that can be built into the drug development machine with data. In the oncology space, there have been a lot of efficiencies gained from real-world data. There's a caveat here. If the company doesn't have infrastructure to be able to bring the right data in at the right time and analyze the data properly, that may not be realized. Mm-hmm. So a lot of folks think about, I'm just going to buy a bunch of data. If you don't have a bench of scientists that can organize the data as to the type of data that goes to the appropriate part of the drug development continuum and actually do the analysis that applies to a point in time, it doesn't work. So I've done it successfully. We've built that machine internally to be able to screen the type of data that you need for the type of question you're asking at the right time and to build it into the process. Because pharma companies, biotech companies, they're like, I've done this historically. I need additional people to do this on top of what I'm doing. That is not the right answer. The right answer is I need additional people to do this as a part of the process that I'm currently working on, to infuse it into the blood work of the whole ecosystem so that, what I've done at J&J, I was in charge of clinical trial, feasibility, and data science. So what we did was, upon startup of every study in oncology at the least, we actually took and screened and brought in data sets to look at diversity in clinical trials. Mm-hmm. Where can we go find those patients? Well, the answer to that is in a data set. In a large data set that you can license, you can find that information. And then you can target your clinical trial to those patient populations. It used to be about finding the site that you can go to. I would argue that it's actually finding the patient and then going to them, because that is how you don't put burden on that patient and the site. And that is how you can capture that patient in their element. These people are sick.
Yeah.
These people are very sick. You don't want them traveling 100 miles to the next academic site. Plus, they don't want to be doing that. They want to spend time with their families. They've just been given a very difficult diagnosis. The last thing you want to do is have them go through all these hoops to enter your clinical trial.
So no, are you saying that you are offering a way to get involved in clinical trials through beyond the data, or is it literally just taking existing electronic medical record data and identifying patients that way?
We'd like to be. COTA is still relatively junior to this particular use case, but a pharmaceutical company or biotech company can take the data that we offer and look for the diversity of patients.
Design their study based on that.
Exactly. And that's what I used to do at J&J, is instead of saying, hey, COTA, can you do this for me? I would say, okay, give me the data. I'm going to look internally, and then I'm going to go out and do this because I have this clinical operations group of people that does this work, but I'm going to guide them in the direction of which I'd like to go with this data.
That's amazing. Well, and I know that the whole way that clinical trials are being done is going through an innovation as well. Just this idea of digital clinical trials or studies, allowing patients to check in from home and things like that. So that's a totally different element. But it's this whole field is desperate for ways to reduce costs so that we can speed the evolution of the drugs and get them out to market.
Absolutely.
And ensure they're effective, of course.
And safe, right? So
yes.
Safe and effective is a really key piece.
Absolutely. So yes, I'm curious how you got into this field in general. Like, bring us back. I know you did an undergrad at Colby, pursued a PhD almost immediately. Tell us what was behind your, ambition in your career back then and how you made the transition to where you are today.
Sure, I'm happy to. It's a bit of a funny story, actually. So I did do my undergrad at Colby. I was, to be perfectly frank, I couldn't hack it in an animal lab. I just couldn't. I couldn't sacrifice the animals. It was really, really tough for me, and I could never get over it. And so I actually did my PhD in a plant biology setting, where a lot of my work was in disease modeling.
Wow.
So I actually have 2 doctorate degrees, one in biology and one in statistics, in part because I couldn't hack it in the animal lab. I honestly couldn't sacrifice the animals. So what I would have said first is I'm a biologist at heart with a really solid set of statistical tools, which is why the data piece of what I do really speaks to me. I was born in Romania, and my mother, when she came here with me, we immigrated here in 1991 after the Berlin Wall fell. When we came here, my mother's degree was not recognized in the U.S., and so she actually ended up having to work on an assembly line and going back to school. So while she was doing that, my grandfather and my grandmother moved here to take care of my brother and I. And my grandfather, almost a year into him being here, got diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Thank you. It's actually a good story, which led me to where I am today. But that was really devastating to me. I remember coming back from the hospital with that diagnosis, and I think I vomited almost immediately.
Oh.
It was just horrible. I thought my world was going to end. But My brother went to this daycare across the street where there were a couple of folks. Actually, it was a convent. And so the nuns there had a sister who was going through a clinical trial that was meant for stage 4 lung cancer patients. They recommended it to us. My grandfather got into it. He, screened in.
Wow.
And it saved his life. So when that happened to us, I said, you know what, I want to do that for other people. It's my life's calling. I felt like it was a miracle. It was truly a miracle. Stage 4 lung cancer is really, really advanced. And he lost probably 90% of his lung capacity through it, but he survived.
That's amazing.
And he survived and passed away of old age a year and a half ago.
Oh my goodness.
So
amazing.
It was incredible. And so I know what it's like to go through the clinical trial story. We were very lucky that he screened in.
That's the biggest challenge. Absolutely. Meeting the criteria.
And we were also lucky that he was placed on a treatment arm, because if he was part of a control arm, the same thing might not have happened. That trial was run by BMS, Bristol Myers Squibb. And so that is why I went and worked there for my first job out of the doctorate degree.
That is really unique, coming full circle with your family.
Yeah. So I hope to be in a place where I can do that for others.
I want to go back to this notion of reading doctor's notes. So I understand that COTA has just recently gotten into working with Google on their natural language processing technology. I'd love to hear how you guys are taking advantage of that and how it's helping you with your ambitions.
Sure. I'm happy to speak about that. It's something I've been looking at for a long time, actually. In my role at BMS and J&J, we seeded companies and we worked with companies to bring electronic medical records to the forefront in these data sets. And at the time, you could really only do the abstraction and curation of this data through people. So it was all people reading these records and actually entering them into a data set. Now, technology can help us funnel in the data that is structured already. All of those drop downs that doctors have to go through and they find very annoying. All of those beautiful drop downs are actually gold to a researcher. So, the demographics of a patient, you can funnel that directly into a data set. The parts that you can't funnel in are things that are found, for example, in a PDF document that's attached to a patient's record. That's text. Or in the doctor's notes, because with every record and anytime that you've ever been to a doctor and you've had a visit, they have to enter a whole bunch of information in to a paragraph. And so that information sort of sits there untapped. And until now, you had to have a person read the whole thing. And you can imagine, a person has tens of years of history.
Yeah.
That's like thousands of pages.
Yeah.
So now what we can do with natural language processing is actually do a fair bit of screening of that text and highlight. So you can actually highlight through natural language processing where the person doing the abstraction should go, where their eye should go. The next generation of this work is to actually have the natural language processing algorithm go through and pull the information out itself. So that the person actually doesn't have to read at all. They just have to kind of be like, okay, that is correct or that is not correct. So they're just checking. And then the last iteration of this is that the program takes it from the record itself and no one has to check. That is quite far away. But what we're doing with Google is that interim step. There are companies that have done this work and have said, this is not possible right now, we can't do it. We believe that we can. We have actually proven it in a couple of disease instances where our models are trying to get relatively precise. And it's been working for us. So the technology is getting to a place where we are doing this faster and easier and better every day. And Google is helping to amplify that with us. And so we're really, really excited about the partnership that we just commenced and are going forward. And so we're really hoping to see some benefit, not just on the accuracy, but also on the speed by which we can do this, because ultimately we want to do this as fast as possible.
Where are you finding the greatest traction in your client base?
It's more the drug development world. So it's more biotech, pharma, biopharma. Payers I love our payers. I've got to say that, but they're not moving fast. I think that the model that is currently there is fine and it works and it works for them. It's actually pharma, biopharma, biotech that is looking to speed up the trials and bring more efficiency into their clinical operations because, as you know, R&D costs a whole lot of money and a whole lot of time, and patients don't have the time. So part of my role at BMS and J&J was, how do I get this drug to the right person faster? And to do that, you can use data and you can use analytics so that it's not a guessing game anymore. It's not well, let's just throw the net out there to patients that might want to join the trial and screen them from there. You can have an educated guess as to who might benefit and who you should actually try to enroll.
Are there any messages to patients? Like, how can patients help themselves get informed and find the trials that need them to participate?
Yeah. I love this question. So I want to assure patients. I mean, my grandfather was a patient. In fact, my grandmother was also a patient. She unfortunately did not make it. She had non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. She had a good 5-year run, but unfortunately she succumbed to the disease. But I want to tell you, the experience that I went through was a very good one. And not just because it saved my grandfather's life, but also because the company that Bristol Myers Squibb that we went through the clinical trial with was very caring about how they treated their patients. And I think part of the issue for patients is there's not a big trust sort of level there. And it's also very confusing. So you often don't really get the protocol behind the study. You often don't really understand what's going on. And sometimes, and a lot of times, it's really hard to enroll because you don't know where to go. Does your oncologist even do this? And so I would say you got to get informed. You got to understand what is out there because your oncologist, we love them, but they're people, right? And so they may only know what they know. And so try to get as informed as possible or have a loved one help to get as informed as possible as to what exploratory medicines might exist out there and take it within your hands to go out there and see and ask, hey, what about this new immunotherapy? Hey, what about this new cell therapy that's out there? Can we try that? Is there any reason I'm not an eligible patient? Or if I am eligible, where can I go? And I know that's really hard to do because after you've had the diagnosis, it's emotional, stressful, hard. You may have to travel, and it's not the best, but it can save your life, or it can save your loved one's life. Go to clinicaltrials.gov, see if there's something out there. If not, ask your oncologist. Talk to that person, and try. Really try, because I believe that there is a right set of treatments and a sequence of treatments for everyone. I believe that.
That's very encouraging, and hopefully people will be able to take advantage of that. With your resource, with COTA's services, I wonder if that encourages drug makers to explore, do more discovery, do more work to come up with new medicine. Do you feel like that is one of the impacts that you're aiming for, is to just enable that?
Yes, absolutely. I think that some drug developers have already started utilizing the data for these things. If you look across the landscape of oncology, a lot of times you're seeing that these treatments are targeted towards specific biomarkers. And I would argue that that is a direct implication of how we use data. Because if we didn't look at data, we would not know that biomarkers are really helpful in how we treat. We would not know that a specific biomarker that is on a particular tumor can be targeted in, from the immunotherapy realm to the, sort of cell biology, cell therapy type of realm. And so it's already helped. And there's so much more than we can do. You've heard this concept of sort of digital twins. That can mean a lot of things, right? So digital twins can mean a digital organic twin, like a set of organs on a plate. It can also mean a fake patient in a data set. So there are companies out there that have slides that basically mimic an organ system. So you can test. It's amazing.
It is amazing. Wow.
You can test a particular drug or a set of drugs and see how it works in an actual organism that's on a disc, on a plate, essentially. It's physical. Sometimes it's made up of technology, right? It's not like a living organism. The other part of this is a synthetic patient that looks and feels like a real patient, that you can test different parts in a cyberspace.
Okay, wow.
That also exists. Not everybody's taking advantage of it. COTA doesn't currently have those, but it's something that we could make. Currently, we just take electronic medical records, we make sense of them, put them in data sets. But it's something that we could statistically go after because we have all of these example patients in our databases. And so drug development or discovery, the discovery side of drug development has so many possibilities. I could see it blossoming over the next few years.
Wow. So where would you like to see COTA go? And what do you think is possible with advancing drug discovery so that there's more tools in the tool belt for the oncology world to treat and address cancer patients' needs?
So clinical genomics, what we call clinical genomics data, is incredibly important and does not currently exist end to end. Genomics data comes from when you screen a tumor for either a whole exome or whole genome sequencing or a really deep set of biomarkers. That data actually exists because a lot of oncologists order those types of assays so they know what kind of cancer they're treating. And so they know what targets in terms of drugs that they can bring to the system.
Yeah.
So they know what targets to bring in. And so that data sits out there in either PDFs or some other mechanism. We can pull that in and match it to the patient's record. So you know the demographics about the patient, you know their previous history, you know their diagnostics, you know all of that. And also, this genomics information. Well, that is a plethora of information that you didn't otherwise have to do research in. So that is the first step for COTA. Is we're going to go ahead and develop this type of data. We already have a partner. In fact, I'm really excited to announce that this partner signed with us this week.
Oh, and congratulations.
Thank you so much. We're really excited about it. I can't release it quite yet, but it's
okay.
It's
so we'll be listening. We'll be listening.
Need to listen. We're going to make an announcement for sure. It's a phenomenal partnership that's going to give us some really deep genomics information that we can match with our clinical data so we can make a holistic system and we can really understand the patient in a holistic way.
Talk to me about your career, sort of any mentors that you have had and how you think about mentorship, given now that you're in the CEO role and you're in a leadership position. Curious your experience with mentorship.
Mentorship is a really big part of who I am. And I have some mentors that I consider family. And part of that is, I've been given some really tough love before, which has shaped me and shaped my career. I've been told a lot of things by a lot of people. And one thing that I would say is feedback is rhetorical. That's one.
I'm going to write that down.
Yeah. And the other is everyone has a lens. I think the most important part of what I've heard from my mentors over time is be yourself and be genuine. And that is something that I have had to really embody myself because I am a woman. I'm a relatively young woman in this space, and I am a relatively young woman in leadership. And sometimes it was really hard to be myself. But if you're not, everyone can tell.
Oh, yeah.
So I often felt like I should be tough and I should, show that I'm tough. And guess what? I'm a big squish ball on the inside. And sometimes I have to be tough, but I don't like it. And I do think that feedback comes with, another thing that you mentioned about mentorship, feedback, right? So I am a mentor to both men and women of, various places in their careers.
Yeah.
They often ask me, well, what do you think as I'm going into, leadership roles? How should I handle that? I always go, it's about people. Leadership roles, yes, you have to know what to do and how to do it.
Yeah.
But it's about people. The greatest accomplishment of your life as a leader is developing another leader.
Yeah.
And being there for them. And enabling them and empowering them to also make a difference. That's how you amplify your impact. And so it's always about, well, how do you do that? And I say, you have to give feedback. And people say good and bad. And I go, there is no bad.
Yeah.
There is no bad feedback. It's constructive. And I'm going to give you constructive feedback with my lens. So you have to put it in the context of your lens.
That's a really, really nice way of thinking about it because, it takes away the potential fear of criticism or whatever the anxiety might be that feedback presents. That's really nice advice. Miruna, this has been such a pleasure to connect with you, hear your story, hear about COTA. We love the work you're up to. Good luck. And we'll be looking for the big news and big announcements coming out.
Thank you so much, Meg. It's been such a pleasure to be here, and I really appreciate the opportunity.
Thanks for joining us for the Game-Changing Women of Healthcare, a production of the Krinsky Company. Today's episode was produced by Calvin Marty, Chelsea Ho, Medina Shabic, Wendy Nielsen, and me, Meg Escobosa. This podcast is engineered, edited, mixed, and scored by Calvin Marty. If you enjoyed the show, please consider leaving a rating and review wherever you get your podcasts. It really does make a difference. And share the show with your friends and colleagues. If you have any questions, comments, or guest suggestions, please email me at meg@thekrinskyco.com. And you can visit us on the web at thekrinskyco.com.